Hey everybody, and welcome to Industry Exchange. I'm your host, Megan Jones. I'm really happy to be here. This is RAW's monthly live stream where industry professionals, they share advice, they share tips, all the insider information that you want to know for emerging artists like yourself. So today's discussion is actually going to be geared towards independent clothing and accessories designers. For those that tune in every single month. You may have remembered the interview we did with Dana Weinstein of Vector Apparel Projects. If you missed that though, if you didn't tune in, head over to our IGTV, that's where you can find that episode. But today we're actually going to take a little jumping stone from there and head over to the next stop of the process, which is retail. And we have the lovely, very special guest over here. We have Ashley Petrie, and she is the merchandise director for none other than the iconic LA-based boutique brand Fred Segal. So thank you so much for joining us.
Excited to be here.
Yes, I'm super stoked. We were talking all things fashion and Fred Segal related before, so I'm really excited to dive in with you. But yeah, for more information on Fred Segal, if you're not familiar, you can check out their Instagram. That's at Fred Segal, that's S-E-G-A-L, or head to fredsegal.com for their latest styles, sales, and collections that they have going on. So Ashley, if you wouldn't mind taking us on a little bit of journey. First off, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate that. What is it like, for you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and the boutique and kind of the relation there.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for about 10 years. I started actually with specialty retail, and it really opened up my eyes to fashion and brands and merchandising and all the kind of fun elements and components involved in it. And then after college, I started a career in buying and was really fascinated with the online sector. There was so much going on in terms of innovation and just exciting movement in that world outside of just like retail brick and mortar buying. So my career is really based in buying. And then I made a transition to a creative agency where I kind of worked on the other side of things and like the wholesale manufacturing brand building side. And then I ended up joining the Fred Segal team to really take on this exciting opportunity to rebuild and create Fred Segal, the brand.
Yeah, so yeah, they're going through somewhat of a transition, having recently landed a new CEO, all these things. So you're like a part of that, like, kind of mission. That's really cool.
Yeah, so it's under new ownership as of about 3 years ago. And really, like, the core mission that we're setting out to do is rebuilding and recreating the foundational elements of the brand. So taking what's best of our history, which the brand's been around for about 60 years. And it started actually as like a tailor shop in Malibu and really put together all of these amazing shops in a single community. So everybody had like their different point of view and different perspective. So that's what we're doing in our flagship in Los Angeles. And then we're carrying that forward throughout the world. So we've opened quite a bit of stores.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and really we're bringing this like West Coast aesthetic and appeal through this kind of like worldly lens. So that's really our focus and like our core initiative. And furthermore, really becoming this like platform again for young emerging brands.
Yes.
And
Talk to you guys.
that stands for brands that are in our backyard in Los Angeles and throughout the world as well, because we are now like on this world stage and everything is so global. We have these stores now internationally. We are looking for brands, new brands constantly to launch first and be kind of that supportive partner. I would say overall, our main focus is through experiential retail. So it's through different activations, it's through things outside of just like a normal traditional wholesale experience.
Okay.
So we tend to focus on things that really highlight the brands themselves and really position them in the best representation possible. And then we do that through like unique activations. Like we recently just, actually as of yesterday, we just wrapped this Browns pop-up event that we did, which was kind of like the tale of two cities where we brought together Los Angeles and London. They had a really similar synergy to our history. So we brought like a curation of brands that we wouldn't normally carry. And then we also did like some fun events with them, and really it's like a reason to come by and see and experience Fred Segal as a whole, like as a lifestyle.
We really resonate with that, especially here at RAW. Part of what we do are creating these like experiential things where people can, go up and talk to the artist that just created that piece there. So I kind of want to point to, the future of merchandising and apparel. Where do you think that's headed? Do you think Fred Segal's got it out on the nail on the head there with like these other experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we are moving more globally as a whole, there's such a bigger stage for everybody. And I think the main focus for retail as a whole is really experiential activations. I mean, that's why like the leading retailers are doing things like that. Like even Le Bon Marché in Paris, they recently did that whole like Made in LA activation. So I think everybody's really catching on to this. This is something that we've kind of been doing since the origin of the brand, but also trying to modernize it in a really interesting way. So we really make sure to capture, all of the different points of view from our stores and the product that we're selling, and just making sure that we're carrying a really unique variety of brands and really constantly offering a high-low element of brand. So that means that we have like a $10,000 Libertine jacket, which Libertine is every shops in our store.
Everyone needs one of those.
Next to like a $100 t-shirt, and it all feels very friendly and very shoppable. That's one of the main things that I do, is that I make sure that all of our stores stay consistent. So we have buyers in all of our different territories, whether that's in Switzerland, Taiwan, Malaysia, Japan. So I manage those buyers, I manage the product, I manage the actual like brand list that they kind of put together, and you'll see the same like commonality within all these stores.
Yeah, that's great. Like the high, low, still making it really accessible for just kind of anybody who wants to come in and have that experience. For those just joining us, a little quick recap here. We are speaking with Ashley Petrie, and she's the merchandise director for Fred Segal. FredSegal.com is where you can check out anything that you want to learn about, all their pop-ups that they have going on, and what gets stocked in stores to see if maybe your brand aligns with that. So if you have friends who are aspiring to be established designers, definitely share this live stream with them. It's definitely some really great knowledge we're going to share with you guys. Remember, hashtag RAWartists. Hashtag Industry Exchange is where you can find that. Let's take a step back. Let's talk about how do those things get there in the first place? Is it the shop owner being like, hey, I really like this, I want to sell it?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of scouting, and it's a little bit of history as well. So I would say, in our stores, there's kind of like a core foundational brand mix in terms of having a lot of denim, having a lot of casual, kind of luxury basics.
Okay.
And those do change. But I would say, we're constantly looking for new brands that complement some of the core things that work. Because obviously, running a retail store, you need brands that are going to drive your everyday volume. You need your redones and your leather denim.
Everyone needs that little black dress.
Exactly, those easy go-to basic items. And so I think for these shop owners, and even for me personally, I'm constantly looking at brands that can elevate my assortment. So that's on a seasonal level. That's even on a yearly level of how will this complement and add to, and what is that point of view, what is that perspective, and how is that going to add to my floor and add value to the store overall.
So that's what you look for when curating brands for boutique, is how I can have that additional element of
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and mostly because we're carrying leather denim and redone and framed, for instance, denim as a category. I don't need 5 other frames or mothers. I need something else. For instance, we recently, this last year, launched a brand called Eve Denim. That was really interesting, and she does a lot of raw salvage denim, and her cuts are really different. So I think it's just really setting yourself apart, whether that's through maybe you have a focus in color, maybe your focus is on silhouette, or maybe it's on the sewing details and the quality.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about the uniqueness and the point of view overall.
So how do you scout people then? What's your scouting method?
Don't underestimate Instagram.
Okay.
And I think there's actually something really exciting about what's going on on these digital channels right now, because I have friends forwarding me brands. I'm just stumbling onto brands, and it's ongoing. I feel like there's so many brands launching just directly on there where they don't even need like the wholesale element. They're actually working directly with customers, which I think is really exciting for young designers because you can cut out like everything in the middle, which can be one of the hardest parts, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm
so
sure.
Yeah, they can work more like direct with all of their customers and really like build their vision through Instagram, which I think is really impactful. And then also through market, which I go to about 2 to 3 times a year. And that exists here in Los Angeles, which is usually a smaller market, New York and Paris, and even Milan, depending on the season. And there, you know, I'll find brands in showrooms, I'll find them through friends, like I'll see like buyers from different stores and like, oh, have you seen this brand called RAWartists? It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that small community. The industry is so small and everyone's constantly talking and trying to find a new thing. So I think between like the fashion markets that we have, showrooms, and then just this digital era that's going on, I think those are probably the biggest areas.
What is the best way for a fashion or accessories designer to, you know, to kind of like get into your world, you know, to say like, I'm a brand worth looking at?
Yeah, I would say make sure before anything else, you have your vision established for what your brand is. And that means not just like, oh, I created a line of t-shirts with some graphics on it, but like, who is your customer? Like, it has to be a full holistic representation of your brand. So it's like brands today are more of a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so really like, who is your customer? Who do you want to sell to in terms of like, what stores do you want to be in? Are you like a mass market brand? Are you a specialty brand? Like decide on your customer and even your store positioning, and then start to reach out, because I think if you reach out too soon, you might get dismissed in terms of like, oh, I don't know, I don't really take this that seriously, it just looks like another whatever brand. But if it really has this like strong, you know, aesthetic and this overall representation of like who you are, I think buyers and like myself are more inclined to really like dig into it and meet with you. And so we have like a customer love inbox, we call it, which is where young designers can actually email us their collections. We actually do check it. It's not like a black hole of emails. We check it every single day.
That's amazing. See, people do check their email, guys. Okay.
It might feel a little discouraging because you feel like you're emailing to nobody.
Sure.
But we do check it. So I have a men's counterpart who does men's, I do women's, and then we kind of do everything in between. So we're constantly vetting that inbox. And then, yes, we do feel like a lookbook is necessary to also include with a line sheet, because your lookbook is your visual guide. So even if that's like a link to your website where you have like your Instagram feed as your lookbook, that totally works, but you need some type of visual representation overall.
Well, yeah, I think that just kind of then lends itself to, like, if they can create that aesthetic for you, like, that's what they're going to be able to do for people that are wanting to buy that product, you know what I mean?
Well, and I think when I'm looking at new brands specifically to either put in our store in Los Angeles, I'm looking at, like, how are they going to visual merchandise? Like, what kind of aspects are they going to bring to the space? Because we typically bring in brands that do like shop and shops. So like, for instance, we recently launched Simon Miller, which is this beautiful shop. They did this like version of their showroom where they brought in this art, where they collaborated with this local artist, and they had jewelry and bags, and like just made it this really cool feeling space that really represented them well. And so they're like a full 360 view. You know, they have the apparel, they have the art, they have the accessories, and so it was a really good statement for them where they come in and they uniquely curate the space. And so that's what I'm also looking for within other brands, is to make sure, like, if I'm like, okay, let's work together, you can come in and really create this whole visual kind of environment for the brand.
Wow, okay. So guys, that's definitely something to be thinking about. Don't just have all your ducks in a row, in other words. It's kind of what we're saying. Prefer working with fashion showrooms and agents over like independent designers, or?
No, I like both.
Yeah.
I think sometimes like younger designers can get lost in a showroom, and I feel like people might into a showroom too early. I think you should feel out the market a little bit before you go into a showroom. And I actually was just having this conversation with a friend of mine who's launching a line.
Wonderful.
And I was telling him, like, start direct, like, see what happens, just starting something on Instagram and the followers you get, and try to seed your product. Like, as much as you might have like a love-hate relationship with bloggers and that whole kind of element of our industry, it can work really well if you put it on the right person. So see where you get before you kind of give that portion of your business away, because it's not always like a home run if you go into a showroom.
So you said give your business away. So when they're going into a showroom, is that something that they're like, is that like a membership that they're paying to be a part of the showroom, or they get selected?
So they are usually, and not all showrooms are the same, but on average you're paying a showroom fee of anywhere from like $2,000 to $3,000 on a monthly basis, and that'll cover like all of your like sales support in terms of like they have the relationship with the buyers and they're reaching out to them for you, they'll go to market for you and so forth. And don't get me wrong, showrooms are absolutely amazing, but I do think for like younger designers, I think sometimes it can be challenging because you're already facing so much in terms of overhead with your production and trying to get orders and all the so like the more that you can kind of keep it close and control it, I actually think it's a little bit of a safer choice.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So still, we're kind of back to the Instagram here. You kind of just use the tools though that are like free, that are right in front of you, and I think that that's kind of like definitely it. So, okay. So what to do and what not to do here. So this live stream is a way for creatives to, definitely learn from established industry professionals, much like yourself. So what takeaways can you give them? What advice for emerging designers? We kind of talked about that a little bit on how to develop that strong brand and stand out. But anything else that they need to know? I
would say don't be afraid to fail. I think that's the biggest thing. I think sometimes it's really hard because you think about all of the things that you're up against at once in terms of having to create this line, go and put yourself out there. How do you go to market? How do you use your network and use your resources available? Like Google is your best friend. Talk to other artists, talk to other designers that are doing the same thing, and you'll find that people are in the same struggle. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there, and if you really are serious about reaching out to designers or to buyers and becoming a great brand, you have to market yourself. You definitely need to do a good job with that, and it's hard.
We have a question from the audience we're going to get to in a minute. Was that you guys are just expanding and kind of almost like the more the merrier. There's room for everybody, who definitely kind of gets their ish in order. So question from the audience, advice for an accessories designer. So we've kind of touched on that a little bit, but advice for accessories designers who are putting on a runway.
I would say partner with another designer who's doing apparel. Typically. I have personally not been to a jewelry or accessory runway show. I would say usually presentations are a little bit more impactful because everything's a little bit more still, and you can create kind of a deeper experience that way. I'd be really curious to see how that looks. Maybe I'm just not up on it, but I would say partnering with apparel designer or somebody that can complement both collections will give you a lot of notoriety.
That's a really great question. I hope we answered that for you. Okay, we have some more questions from the audience. Really great. So, twofold question: how to differentiate your brand on social media, / how do I identify your audience? Okay, it sounds like we have some marketing questions here, which we're talking about. Yes, you definitely know how to market yourself. So I guess, is it pretty pictures?
It is, and I think it's putting together all of the different kind of components. So what does that look like in terms of your formula and how you're posting and how you're storytelling? So I would say the best way to differentiate that would be through your imagery, and through your own personal imagery. You're not just reposting things online. This is like your own kind of natural thing that you're doing. So I would say through the formula itself. So whether that's like one day you post something lifestyle related, the next day you post something from your line, the next day you post something that inspires you, whatever that is, but you kind of get into this algorithm where like whoever really resonates with that is going to follow you because they're really excited about the next thing that you're posting.
Can you show the second question again? I want to make sure we got that. How do I to identify your audience? I think that's kind of like what you're saying is if you are authentic and you're authentically putting yourself out there, you're going to kind of attract that same.
Right, and I think you just need to really figure out like who you are. Like, are you a streetwear brand, you know, where you're like kind of like an I Am Gia customer for women, and like you love to cater towards like more of that like streetwear element thing? Like, what does that consist of then? Like, what are people best in class kind of doing in that world? And what best represents that? So just think about like who you're selling to and how that appeals to them.
And so I kind of had a question about, I guess, like what makes, when you're looking at like a fashion designer, do they need to have like 3 set things, like multiple things? Do you want them to have like a whole line? Or is it like they do these 2 things, they do it really well, and that's that?
Yeah, I don't think it has to be this like large collection of product by any means. I think like if they're just focused on one thing, like for instance, there's a brand called Monogram, and they just do these really fun graphic tees, and they're actually based here in Los Angeles. And they do really well. It's really fun, it's kitschy, no one really does it like them, it's great, and there's no really like reason to evolve into other categories. So I do think like focusing on like a core aspect of whatever you think you do best is great, definitely. And I think like that adds actual value because you seem really focused. Doing a lot of everything and having like all these things that don't really make sense, it might just get lost.
I see your face there. We do not want to. No, we don't. But I agree. It's like so overwhelming. It's like because that shows me almost like you don't know who you are. You don't know what you're,
right.
You're kind of grasping at everything.
Yeah, like I actually not too long ago had someone email me this line sheet of like they do beauty, they do clothing, they do couture, and I was just like, I don't know what is. That's a lot of things, and a lot of very like.
I don't know what you do.
And a lot of very like special things. So I'm like, that seems a little crazy.
That seems like a lot of work too. So another question. I'm loving all these questions, guys. Thanks for watching and writing them in. How to take a sample line to the next level. So partners, investors. Do you recommend at any level that people potentially look for investors, or where that might? I don't know.
Most of the time, you can kind of do it on your own. You have to get a little creative, and I know sample lines are really expensive, especially if we're talking about like a full ready-to-wear line. A sample line, depending on how many you're making, can cost up to like $10,000, depending on where you're having it made. And
that's why we're going to talk to our Vector Apparel projects. You guys go back to that lesson. And
there's some factories that'll totally work with you depending on what you're doing. They might actually even like back you if you have the right conversation of like, hey, I'm actually like doing this, and here's like my projected orders, and here's like where I see the trajectory of my brand. You actually might find people who work with you. I do feel like having a sample line is important because it does really help in terms of like understanding the quality, the feel, the look of the brand. Line sheets don't always do that. I personally won't ever buy from a line sheet. Like I have to see the product in person. So I do think that's important, but I think it varies by situation.
By what exactly? So Fred Segal, moving forward, these are definitely changing times. Do you see any markets that is emerging with Fred Segal?
I do. I mean, I always go to New York market. It's one of my favorite markets. But I feel like more and more Paris market is becoming so much more of a world stage for brands. You have brands from Korea there, from Japan, from Europe obviously, and more people from the US are actually solely just showing in Paris. So I think that's a really good stage and audience for brands. I know that it can obviously be expensive in terms of like the travel and where do you show. I think if you are going to a place like Paris Market, it might be best to like partner with other designers. So you have like a collective where buyers can come in and it's like a one-stop shop, or you can rent space from a showroom where you're not actually signing up to be like full-time in their showroom, but just for that market, and they'll help you. I actually, when I was working at a creative agency, we did that with our women's collection that we launched, and it was really successful for us. So I think market is really, like, it's really helpful overall, and there are large showrooms that you can participate in that are really great. They get a ton of foot traffic, or they're smaller, more intimate, but again, I think it depends on the aesthetic of your brand. Like, if you're a much more higher elevated price point, much more specialty, it might make sense to do more of like a you know, collective that's a little bit more quiet and fancy and feels more intimate. Whereas like if you're doing t-shirts and you just like want a ton of volume, whatever, I would say definitely check out like a showroom.
So you work specifically, you know, with women's lines, but do you see any other lines or types of, you know, I think here with Raw we see a lot of streetwear. Are there any other types of, you know, of fashion that are like kind of getting a breakout, do you think, that more people are looking to buy?
I think really there's so much for everyone right now. You know, I think there's like so much exciting things going on with like repurposed clothing. Like there's this awesome brand from New York called Bodhi, which is beautiful, and she took all these like fabrics from like the 15th century in France that she found, and she's recreating these jackets and and yeah, I think like there's not necessarily like a wrong or a right or like a certain trend that's going on, because like I don't even know what's trending anymore because there's so much happening at such a fast pace. So yeah, I feel like it's just like becoming more and more like unique in the market. It's less of like a cookie cutter, like I have to do this to be successful, and it's more like I'm just doing whatever I want and it works.
I love it. I absolutely love that 100%. But so that's amazing advice, and I think that that's everything. Just kind of reaffirms, you know, everything here that, you know, we try to instill with our artists that we work with. You know, just be raw, do you, own it, own it. It's kind of something that I like to say, but hone and own your brand is definitely really important. So thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I love all the questions. Keep them coming though. Later Jaden can answer them. Thanks Jaden off camera, taking care of that for us. But thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. You can stalk her on LinkedIn if you want. That's what I'm going to do later. Ashley Petrie of the Fred Segal Boutique. And for those that are local here in LA, make sure you go and check out the very iconic classic Fred Segal boutiques. And of course, they're popping up everywhere with these pop-up boutiques, so make sure you check out fredsegal.com for more information on that. But we are going to be back here next month with another live stream, November 27th. We're going to be talking about filmmaking, so all you filmmakers out there, make sure you're tuning in. We want to know, we're going to be talking about funding, how to get your project funded, all that good stuff. So hang tight. Any questions, remember to hashtag RAWartists, hashtag Industry Exchange. But just follow us on Instagram if you're not already, which you should be because you're watching this live. So thanks guys for tuning in. We'll see you next month.
Thanks guys.
Bye.